I'm Warren Sprouse, and you're on the Bible Forum. It is Sunday night, March 11, 2018. I want to talk to you about biblical prophecy, some end times stuff. One of the more important facts relating to the church and Israel is that they are at once the same and not the same. There is a physical Israel, those born to Jewish mothers. And there is a spiritual Israel, those born again, the spiritual sons of God. Now you have to know that in biblical parlance, God has no daughters. Daughters traditionally do not inherit. And all of the children of God inherit. And so they're all sons. Here's how it works. About 2,500 years ago, 2,000 to 2,500 years after Adam and Eve, God called a man, his name was Abram, to leave his idolatry and to leave his home. He lived in the area of Ur of the Chaldees. This would have been just after the dispersion that occurred surrounding the Tower of Babel. In Genesis chapter 12, God promises Abram that he, Abram, will be the father of a great nation. God said, I will make of thee a great nation, I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. Leaving his home and traveling not toward Israel, but north, up into the plain of Moriah, he built an altar to the Lord. He was worshiping the God who had appeared to him. Now, the plain of Moriah is where Shechem is. It is 57 miles north of Jerusalem today. It's a place where Joseph was buried and where Gideon fought the Midianites. And it was only after all of that that he then began to travel further south, coming down along the eastern side of the Mediterranean to an undisclosed place. We don't know exactly where he stopped off. But we know that he was a wealthy man, and he had taken his family and his flocks. And he found a place that looked like it would support that size of an entourage. But the next thing we know about Abram is that he took his family and his flocks to Egypt because there was a famine in the land. Here he adds Hagar to his family, the maidservant to Sarai, mother of Ishmael. Literally, God will hear. Returning, God appeared to the now 99-year-old Abram to make a covenant with him. Genesis chapter 17. It's here that God required every male in Abram's family and the servants to be circumcised, a sign of this covenant that God was making, changing Abram's name to Abraham, from high father to father of a multitude. It is from Abraham, all of Israel, the name God gave Isaac's son, Jacob, descends, as well as the children of Ishmael and Esau, perennial enemies of Israel. The nation of Israel, as it was called, coming out of Egyptian bondage 400 years later, was ordered by God to destroy all the Gentile nations of this promised land. Something Israel failed to do, a failure that has plagued her ever since. Through conquest and dispersion, Israel has remained, even in exile. She has remained unique, unified, undeterred from her biblical, covenantal destiny. The Romans defeated Jerusalem in 70 A.D., destroying the temple. The final dispersion was in 135 A.D. when the Romans utterly destroyed Jerusalem, building a new town on its ruins. No Jew was permitted to set foot in this town on pain of death. From 638 A.D. to 1917, Jerusalem was under Islamic control, except for a short period during the Crusades. Toward the end of the 19th century, Jews began returning to Jerusalem. The Zionist movement was born. The British took control in 1917 with the defeat of the Ottoman Turks. This saw the Balfour Declaration promising a homeland for Israel in Palestine. The British stalled on fulfilling that promise for several decades, even through the next World War. But the British withdrew in 1947 with the UN Resolution 181, which called for the partitioning of Israel between Jews and Arabs, a resolution the Arabs firmly rejected. But on May 14-15, 1948, the Jewish nation of Israel was once again declared back in the homeland, a nation, with the promise from that nation they would never leave again. Now, with a population of 500,000, Israel was immediately attacked by 5 Arab nations from all sides: Lebanon, Syria, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt. 5 additional wars would be fought: 1956, 67, 73, 82. Each time, Israel became stronger, and Arab resistance became more fragmented. But Israel has fulfilled the biblical prophecy of becoming a garden in the desert, of dominating the region, and of numerous inventions and technological advances which have benefited the entire world. And it has now been 70 years since Israel declared her autonomy. In May of 2018, Israel will celebrate that milestone. 70 years in biblical terms is significant. The number 7 is God's number of completion. God rested on the 7th day. The 7th year in Jewish culture is a sabbatical year, resting the land. 70 years represents 10 sabbatical years. 70 is made up of 2 perfect numbers, numbers representing perfection. One is 7, the number of perfection or completion, and the number 10, a number of judgment, also a number of completion. We have 7 days in a week. There are 70 elders that went up Mount Sinai to have a special meal with God in Exodus 24. 10 Sabbath years equals 70. 70 Israelites started a nation within a nation during Egyptian captivity. 490 years of captivity in Egypt is 7 times 70, a judgment from God. Jerusalem is the city on 7 hills. Only one other city of the world boasts this phenomenon: Rome. And Rome has always been a spiritual enemy of God. And so Israel will celebrate her Jubilee in May. 70 years of continuous occupation of her traditional and biblically significant city and state. So what does all that mean? Well, in some circles, it doesn't mean anything. since the cycle is meaningful only when the Sanhedrin declare it. And when the 10 tribes of Israel are back in the land according to their original tribal inheritances. And when there is a fully functional Sanhedrin in Israel, fully accepted by Israel, and a full complement of 71 judges. These things do not exist today. But it is the blast of the shofar by the Sanhedrin that signals the entry of the Jubilee year. And in biblical eschatology, in the doctrine of final things, this is a big deal. May not be perfect, may not be complete, but it's not going to change one Jewish heart. It will be celebrated as though it is the real deal. And when the real deal does come, and it's coming, it will put this one to shame, because it's coming when Jesus comes. But we're going to have a party, and it's going to be fun, filled with biblical significance, prophetic significance, and mighty in terms of empowering Israel in the world. Our president has said he would be there. That's a statement. We'll see how it all works out.